Thank you for coming back. We're going to start the second segment.
Aquí estamos.
I wanted to thank all of you who've been sharing on the chat the vision, and the vision expands, it renews. Uh, so these sessions, they help us value the leaders, the people who we walk alongside and the journey as brothers and sisters, not threats, where we can appreciate the different styles of leadership and also personalities, those elements that make us very unique and make us have a very unique um, impact in the kingdom of God, and it makes the kingdom of God, the church, to fulfill its mission, and that makes this the church to be the beautiful bride, holy. And meanwhile, we are being transformed, we're being shaped. In the previous exercise, we uh, talk about the gifts for their people's lives. That doesn't mean that we're going to ignore the areas that need to be worked on, but it's always good to start by admiring, by realizing that we are God's image, and how we can be part of that work. How can we be part of the instrument in His hands? This part, on this part, we're going to talk about practical help in mentorships and the task of forming mentors and developing mentors. This is not an exhaustive list of principles. There may be many, many more principles. Principles are practiced in every moment, every time, uh, different from rules and regulations that are more limited. But the fact that I am mentioning principles now, it doesn't mean that we I'm covering all principles. We're going to talk about skills, abilities that we have to develop in a mentor. It's not an exhaustive list. We can add more abilities or skills in the development of leaders. And finally, I am going to talk about the experience I've had in implementing this in a work um, team that I have. And we're going to develop a practical drill, and have mentors as equals, and skills to and tools to do something like this. We're going to talk about guiding principles in a mentorship relationship. You have your workbook. There are some blanks that you need to fill as we continue the presentation. It is important to for us to identify, like any relationship, we have to uh, identify principles. Those are like the tracks on which we're going to move, both mentors and mentees. These principles will give direction to us as mentors, but it will also guide the mentee to know which direction to go in. We may have many more principles, but I would like to talk about these four. The first one is collaboration. The main idea is that the formation of mentors is a teamwork, a team effort, a team effort that involves two, the mentor and the mentee, and more people can come along and they can accompany the mentee so that they can fulfill their purposes in Christ and the goals that they have um, established. And that can be in a session like this. We can in sessions like this we can talk about dreams in life. We can develop the mentee. It is important to understand that there's no expectation of control or dominion over the mentee, but all contrary, to walk alongside the mentee and make available the knowledge, experiences, and ministry opportunities. The mentee also gives permission to the mentor to counsel them, to keep him accountable, to times when it's necessary. That, in other words, the mentee invites the mentor to be part of their spiritual journey. Again, it is important to have this relationship of mentorship. It's a teamwork. Principle number 2, it is the principle of we can go to slide 2 or the next slide, independence. The mentorship relationship is a teamwork, but the responsibility to learn and to walk in their spiritual journey, it's up to the mentee. That has to be very clear to the mentor. It's about the journey of the mentee. When we invest in others, we too are being blessed. We are learning, but the focus is to walk alongside the mentee in their journey. So the ultimate responsibility rests on the mentee. The worst case scenario in a relationship is the dependence, where the mentee cannot act, cannot make decisions without the approval of the mentor. That would be the worst mentorship relationship. That's why it's important from the beginning of this mentorship relationship and for there to be a mutual commitment to respect that independence. The mentor must use common sense and spiritual discernment to not cross that line that separates the manipulation to counseling, to modeling with their example and support in prayer. I hope that I am very clear. Even though there's a teamwork, it is important for the mentor to understand and to communicate that the mentee is the ultimate responsible person uh, in their ministry journey. The next principle is the principle of responsibility. Although there is a link, emotional and spiritual link between the mentor and the mentee, and that is going to happen because it's a close relationship. So there's a close link, both a relationship and spiritual and emotional. It is important for the mentor to define the limits where the responsibility ends, what their part is, what the mentee must choose, and what they must act upon. As mentors, we need to remove the weight from our shoulders that to think that the success of the mentee depends on the mentor. We need to remove the weight of um, the the success of the mentee is going to be is going to depend upon what we model to them, what our example is to them. We celebrate the success of our mentees, but as mentors we need to be committed with the process. We are committed to walk alongside the mentee. Our focus has to be put on the process. This helps me because sometimes our mentee will not choose to do what we are advising them to do, but something different, because the elements they have to decide, that's the action or decision they need to make. But that removes the weight, that emotional link that makes me think like, oh well, I failed, I didn't walk alongside them. No, no, no. Our responsibility is not to make decisions for them or the action plan. As the mentor, when I have a relationship with a mentee and I see that the mentee is always ignoring me, and they ask us to do something and they do the opposite of what we talk, then at that moment there's not a commitment on both parties. But that's a different situation. In a relationship between mentors and mentees, we need to be focusing on the process, and we need to let them know that the responsibility is to make decisions and to execute the action plan. As mentors, we can advise, we can share life experiences, we can ask questions that our mentees um, be able to identify those blind spots. We can offer counseling if they've given us permission to have accountability, that we can do that, but we need to define clearly where our responsibility ends. So, so the next one is to measure the quantitative and qualitative measurement. Many years ago, I heard this phrase: what we can measure, you can evaluate, and what you can evaluate, you can improve. So what we can measure, you can evaluate, and that which you can evaluate, then you can measure. So in the mentorship relationship, because it's not a mathematical formula, it's not an experiment where we have to, if we add the exact precise dose, where you're going to have a perfect result. It's a personal relationship. So we must understand that there are certain elements that we are not able to measure quantitative, or it's not going to be easy to measure quite quantitatively. That doesn't mean that these elements are less important. That only means that we need to approach them differently. We also need to realize that we're going to be less aware of those. So for that reason, we must be intentional. For example, I can measure how many meetings I had with my mentee a month. I can say I met 8 times a month with my mentee. I can measure that. I can quantitate that. But the quality of the meetings, the quality of the conversations, the freedom with which the mentee was sharing with their lives, and the way the mentee is reacting when I let them know about an area they need to work on. These are elements that are difficult to quantify, but we need to evaluate. We need to find a way to measure that. For that reason, one of the principles is we need to be intentional. We need to be intentional in trying to measure the progress of in the our mentees journey. So these four principles I've found easy to help me as I am mentor, or I am being mentor. It's helped me. So now we're going to talk about skills to developing a mentor. In this sense, I invite you. There's a conference that Brother Crocker uh, has shared in the past. Is the characteristics of the transformational leader. I don't have the link right now, but I will pass it on to Milton and he can pass it on to you. There are 11 traits of a transformational leader, and you can apply these in the skills to develop a mentor. You have has to be a strategist, humble, somebody who's always learning, visionary, etc. But because of this presentation, I would like to present 5 skills that I found in my own journey that are basics as a platform, and we can add even more skills. The first one is to connect through effective listening. When I am talking about connecting, I mean the in the relationship between mentor and mentee, there has to be a sense of um, connectivity. Perhaps you've this happened to you. You've listened to a preacher, a presenter, and they're speaking and they're sharing something so beautiful every time that this person presents a theme, a speech, or writes a book. You want to have access to that content. But there's more in that relationship of the mentor, beyond knowledge, beyond what you can read or hear from somebody else. It has to do with this relationship, that link, that personal link, where you're aware that there's a personal investment from the mentor to the mentee. Of course, there has to be clear delineations where you can foster a friendship, but not as a being. It's not a um, like you're gonna be his partner in crime in a way. No, but it's a friendship that you foster with them, but not to be a partner in crime in a way. So in that relationship, that personal relationship, then we practice the effective listening. That's the ability to listen actively, to use our senses. And there are two elements that I've considered uh, key in this effective listening. One is attention, and the other one is the intention. Attention and intention. What do I mean by that? Again, there's an example of my own journey in my fatherhood, especially with Jeremias. He's 6. He is a little person who loves that when we have a conversation, that my whole attention is focused on him. Uh, one time, he told me, "Dad, I want to talk to you." I was working on my computer. I was answering some emails, and he came to me, and I said, "Sure." I was like, "I'm gonna multitask, and I'm gonna be talking with my son, and I'm gonna answer emails when he talks. I'm gonna be working on the computer." And then all of a sudden he closes my computer, and I said, "No, no, no, I'm answering an email." And he closed the computer, and he said, "Hermias, we're talking." So that made me think of how many times uh, when I offer somebody that I was going to listen to them, in my mind I was like, I'm going to listen to them and do other things. And that happened to me as well. I wanted somebody to listen to me, and the other person was doing something else, and to me the attention was not there. So we need to think about it. I share some ideas in the workbook. We're not going to go into detail very quickly. We're going to cover these, but that will help us to have a more attentive and intentional listening. One of the recommendations is to ask questions that will help us to understand the context better of the conversation, not just by curiosity, but with a genuine interest to understand what is what's the surrounding issues, on the aspects that the mentee is sharing with us. We need to identify key points in the conversation. A lot of times there's many details on the conversation, but it doesn't have to do with the main point that the mentee wants to talk to us. So I need to develop that relationship to identify key points, so that if I remove everything else as part of the conversation, but I only keep those key points, then I can understand the situation we're talking about. The other recommendation is provide feedback that will provide allow the mentee that to make them know that the mentee may know that he's being listened, but also the mentor make sure that they're understanding what is being shared with them. We also need to be focused on the main point of the conversation. That is our responsibility as mentors. Sometimes the mentee, because of the lack of practice of sharing with others what is happening, that person will talk about what is happening in their lives, in their ministry. They will go from here to there, and covering many issues. So the mentor needs to help them bring back to the key point, the main point of the conversation, and the purpose or the goal that they are trying to accomplish together. So another example is to pay attention to what is being communicated, not only verbally, but also physically. What is the posture of the mentee, and what is the posture of the mentor? When somebody says, "I want to talk to you," I want to talk to you, I want to make sure that even my body language is communicating that I am paying attention, that conversation is important to me, and it's not just being there relaxed and seated there like beach, basically close my eyes and I pretend that I am that I'm listening. Of course, There are there are different natures of the conversation. There are different types of conversation, but our body language is important about the message that is being shared. Another aspect is to show empathy on the feelings of the mentee. We cannot, when we work with a youth or teenagers, we cannot undermine the challenge they're going through. We cannot say, oh, it's just the age. It's an age related issue, because for that person, that hurdle, that difficulty that they're experiencing is difficult, and we need to show empathy and value the situation the mentee is going through. Finally, we need to find and create a warm environment for conversation. So that has to do with the ability to connect, to listen, the skill to connect through effective listening. Another skill that we need to develop with the mentee is to build a relationship of commitment and trust. It is important for the mentor to connect with the mentee, and for the mentee to be excited to learn from the mentor. This is very key. The question is, as mentors, are we inspiring, are we motivating the mentees to want to be with us, to want to be in those situations with us, for them to even make adjustments in their agenda, the busy time, because they know that that time is good, that it is beneficial for them. So we need to build that platform of positive influence. Of course, confidentiality, it's basic. As mentors, we need to walk. As mentors, we need to walk that second mile, and we when we talk about our own family, our interest and things that we like, that will strengthen the relationship with their mentees. As mentors, we need to be transparent and vulnerable with the mentees to let them know that we are not perfect, that we are walking together in the journey. There's a lot for us to learn, to grow. We need discernment for sure. So as we're vulnerable and transparent, it doesn't need to be a catharsis session. So what we share has got a purpose, and it has to inspire others so that they can be ready to face conflicts and challenges in the spiritual journey. Number three is to keep a specific and effective focus. I say it is my responsibility as the mentor to help the mentee to stay focused, to keep the specific motivation. As the mentor, I can help the mentee to identify priorities and concrete actions for them to take, and it's the responsibility of the mentee is to choose to put those into action. But it is important that we help them, for them not to derail on the actions that we had committed to follow. For me, it is important that the mentee gives permission to the mentor, so that there's a personal accountability process. So we need to work together in refocusing, to go back to the goals, pre-established goals. Number four, help the mentee to identify and overcome barriers to progress. So in this specific point, I would like to focus on the blind spots. Well, we all have blind spots. So just like physically, our eyes has a range of vision, a field of vision. In ministry, our ministry eyes only has a field of vision, and as leaders and mentors, we have the ability to come to the mentees to share experiences, stories, ask questions, and we can help the mentee to move a little bit in the direction, so that the blind spots that were there can be eliminated. when we eliminate or expand our vision, we can identify barriers, dangers that before we had not identified. We didn't see that they were there. So the mentor helps to identify. But again, the mentor cannot uh, make the take the mentee's responsibility. Galatians 6, uh, that's one of the chapters that has helped me to develop this skill. I still work on it because their relationship between the mentor and the mentee, there is a spiritual and personal link. And because of that personal link, I tend to want to do what the mentee is supposed to do because I'm interested, I'm invested in their spiritual life, their ministry life, their leadership. But Galatians 6 in, says, carry the load of each other. So we share the load. But 3 verses ahead in 5, it says, but each one of them carry their own weight. So to me, it was a little bit contradictory. At first, it says, let us carry together the weight of each other. But then it says that each one of them should carry their own load. So in other words, we need to, I use the example of prayer, my commitment to pray for and with my mentee. That is a load that I carry with them. But the action and decision, I cannot carry that load. That's a load that is up to the mentee to carry themselves. So number 5 is help the mentee to grow. So basically, if we are developing the 4 abilities or skills, the previous ones, it will help us to help the mentee to grow. But in particular, I I wanted to add to our list of skills. Again, I took this from a book that is called The Manual of Mentoring, the Mentoring Manual, that was written by Julie Stark. It's only in English. It's a very small book. If somebody can have access to it, it's easy. It's has very practical ideas. So in number 5, in it has to do with the use of tools that we can bring and present to the mentee so that they, in a very intentional way and systematical way, can advance, evaluate their progress, and to develop action plans specifically and concrete that will help them to achieve goals in this mentoring relationship. One of the tools is the cycle of life, or this we're going to the wheel of life. If we're going to use it here in a little bit. Let's go to the next slide. We're going to work with the wheel of life. I'm gonna share with you about sharing the vision and mentorship development. At the beginning, I shared with you some phrases. I heard these phrases from pastors, DSs, leaders, and I have more quotes. I remember in one of uh, these visits that we did with the districts in one of the regions, I started taking notes when we were talking about mentoring. We found elements I myself what was including in that. How can I mentor others if I was not mentor? I don't know how to do it. As I reflected upon that, I realized that I was able to mentor, that I was mentored, that I had been mentored, that they were intentional with me. Perhaps it was not an institutional effort. Perhaps it had not been done systematically like we are doing it right now with a mentorship of impact, but I had been mentored. So I started sharing with other friends in ministry. Why don't we do something together that will help us grow our trust, and we can say we're walking together. So this is how it went. We share the vision of development of mentors, And this is what I would like to recommend these steps as we share the vision on mentorship development. The first step to share the vision is start with your close team. Don't get impatient, and don't think that you're going to create a mega seminary soon. That can be parallel to it. But I want to encourage you to start with your close team in a very concrete step. Right now, I work with this focus with the NY Global team. My brother Milton is part of the council. He's part of this. First, we model the work of or the role of the mentor, but I encourage all of them that together we can work with this focus of mentorship, of leadership development, of developing mentors. And for us, it was very helpful to use this mentorship, peer mentoring tool. So we started to practice that. I practiced that as I was serving in South America. As a matter of fact, there's a book. This book, I was trying to find it, but I couldn't find it in Spanish, but I know it exists. The Leader That Shines, David Confield is the author, is really good. It's about mentorship, uh, peer mentoring. So we did that. I started with the close team. We shared the vision. We modeled the mentorship role. We made a commitment to learn together about the fundamentals and practices of mentorship. We participated in seminars, conferences, reading, putting into practice that which we were learning, sharing some ideas. Number three, as a group, we established goals of accompaniment. They were not just simply meetings to learn what we learn from the reading, but how can I apply this in my ministry, my family life, and where do I want to go? So we established these goals, but we also established a process in which the participants, those who were part of this group, were in agreement. In this NYI the team, we have peer mentorship groups, and as my role as a global NY director, I am part of the both groups. But each group, they have their own goals and processes of development. So the benefit of these groups is as we learn, as we acquire knowledge, as we develop best practices, we are implementing them and we start a rhythm of work. Number four, we have also established a process that participants agree upon. This has to do with the times and how many times we meet. As the global team, we meet through Zoom, and of course, when we are able to meet in person, that is part of our development as peer mentoring. But we are establishing those processes that we're going to follow. And finally, we review the progress and renew your commitment. I believe that one of the keys for mentoring for a long-term mentorship process is that we need to review the progress, we need to make adjustments, we celebrate the success, and we evaluate the original process, the original goal for this mentorship relationship. I was thinking about peer mentoring. For me, it's like this Netflix focus, almost like we have seasons. So that has helped us to stay in the long term, even though we're not close physically, especially with the pandemic. It can be tiring to be connecting every day, every week. But if we establish a time that we get together and then we have a break, and then we continue with season two, then season three, that allows us to prolong our practice of this peer um, mentorship process. So one of the tools that I mentioned earlier, the wheel of life, that is in the next slide. We're going to work with it. We're going to work in small groups. So the Wheel of Life was created by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it's been used commonly in the coaching and mentorship processes because it's a visual tool that will help us identify the key aspects in a person, but it will also help us to evaluate the satisfaction in each one of these areas, as you see in this graphic, this circle. This cake is divided in slides. Each slide has to do with a life area. It doesn't have to do necessarily only these areas. You can create your own wheel of life. You can go to internet and you'll find other models of the wheel of life. This model is presented in a book uh, called, it's a Felix Ortiz. Each young person needs a mentor. I took it from there. So one of them is the body stewardship, mind stewardship, time stewardship, and then money. And there's many areas, family, friends, school. So the exercise or the school, the drill that we do here as an individual is to evaluate ourselves, to measure the satisfaction in each area. For this presentation, I didn't do all areas. I did 4 just to show you how a person would do this. For example, in family, it's a color in green, and it says as I evaluate myself, I feel like my satisfaction, I am on number 8. I give myself an 8 rate. It is not just to give myself a rate, but to say why I'm on 8. I can say, well, I think I'm having good quality time with my children, my wife, but I think that there are still things that I need to improve on. I need to be intentional, my conversations and my children, and you can evaluate yourself there, how the stewardship and body. I know I need to lose weight, I need to exercise. I am on a 7 right now. I can say why I'm on a 7. So the idea is for us to share this with our peers who are part of our group, this peer mentorship. The recommendation is for it not to be a very big group. It can be 5, 6 people most. That way we can all share together more freely, and we can also go deep in details. So that's what I'm talking about, these areas. Let's talk about, for example, family and body stewardship. You all can work on that. The drill that we're going to do is so based on the wheel of life, go ahead and pick 2 areas. Out of all those areas, pick those 2 areas. Evaluate yourself, evaluate your level of satisfaction, and mark it on that graphic, and then explain why. Now, if I do the body stewardship, that I give myself a 7, what can I do to get to this, maybe in a month or 2 months? How can I be a number 8? This has to do with concrete steps, something that I'm going to talk with my peer mentors, not only where I am, but where I want to be and what I will do to get to that point. So you're just gonna get pick 2 areas, and then we're gonna go to the next slide. So we're going to have a peer mentoring encounter. There are some steps that we're going to follow. That is in your workbook. I'm going to read it here. So the next slide, we're going to start with a short time of prayer. Then each of your group is going to answer, how are you? How is your family doing? How is your ministry? Okay, not yet, not yet. So this is where you're going to use the wheel of life. Use one of the two areas that you're going to pick. You're going to answer those questions. How are you? How is your family? How is your ministry? For example, for example, the question, how are you? Based on the example I gave you, I can use the, the body stewardship. So it's easy to say, how are you? I'm good. But if you go in depth, yeah, I'm good, but I'm overweight. I am getting tired. I need to do more things. So the wheel of life helps me to be more specific in answering those three questions. So in using the wheel of life, you're going to answer those three questions. Number two, after you prayed, you shared, what obstacles have we found so far in these areas that you mentioned? Which obstacles? I don't have a justification, but the reason is I had a problem, anxiety. I couldn't really exercise. I ate more, but I'm recovering. But physically now I can exercise. I don't have to be eating more. Those are the obstacles that I found. So each one of you are going to do that. Number three. So what are the next steps? Each person will share what they will do. I evaluate myself number seven. That's not what I want. I want to get to number eight. What do I need to do to get to number eight? I need to establish goals that will challenge me, that are realistic, that has to do with a life purpose, with my mission. So this is advisable for you to take notes and to review in the next peer mentoring session. The next step is logistics and practical issues. This just has to do with a date, time, place of the next meeting. Who is going to be the facilitator? This is one of the advantages of the peer mentoring session. There's not one mentor that is above the rest, but all at a given time will be the mentor or the facilitator in this mentorship, this peer mentorship. Let's go back one, Milton. On this step, each person will share and we can advise or can uh, it can give advice or life experience as opposed to coaching. Coaching asks for you to ask questions, but in this dynamic, you are giving permission to your mentorship, your peer mentorship fellows to give you advice, to give you counseling, and to for you to discern if it's a counselor advice that is pertinent or to your life situation, but you're giving them permission. So number four is that you have to plan the details of the next meeting, who's going to be the facilitator, etc., etc. So Milton, you think we can have 15 minutes? This is the last thing. We're closing with this. So Milton, are you there? Let's do 15 minutes. I know that we need more time, but we just need to know and get to know and get familiar with the tool. After that, in a later time, you can get to know better. So if you can do teams 3 or 4, if possible, that would be great. And then we can stop sharing the screen. Any questions about this drill? Any comment? All right. I just want to make sure that you all have your workbook because that's where the process, that's where the wheel of life is, and it outlines the process so they can practice. 15 minutes, small groups, and then we'll come back for just final thoughts. The time was limited. Let us just share some final thoughts, and after that, I'm going to um, ask Milton to dismiss us. But the mentoring process, at the beginning, I mentioned that we need to connect it with the blessing that we find. We have to, we are putting our experiences so they can use them in the kingdom of Jesus Christ. We can mentor others, no matter how many years we are in ministry or whether we just started recently. We can start doing it. As I told you about my son, my 8-year-old son, in his context with the resources that he has, he started to cultivate this practice, this discipline of accompanying other people, in addition to making sure that the desires of your heart are the correct ones. We need to make sure that we are the best stewards possible of this discipline, which is mentorship. So we need to organize, pack, and to deliver the knowledge, experiences, skills that we have in a way that it can be a gift for those who are receiving it, and that they can appreciate it, that a smile is in their face because they're receiving that from you. And as we are preparing this gift that we are giving to others, let us imagine what the Lord can do or is already doing in those who we are accompanying, knowing that the contribution that they will have for the kingdom is important. So, what a blessing it is for us to come alongside them and be part of their ministry journey. So, as a mentor or a mentor of mentors, let us never stop learning. Let us be humble and grateful as we spend time with others, those who mentor us or those who we mentor, those who are part of this journey. Because through the forming of mentors, we are also learning and we are growing as mentors. Let us always remember the opportunity to be a better mentor can start today. I am convinced of that. So let us, uh, may the Lord bless you. If you have questions, and the comment section, I left some materials, some books that I recommend for you to read. The mentoring materials are in several languages: English, Spanish, French. It's a great curriculum to use for our mentees. So, all right.